30 seconds. 20 seconds. 10 seconds.
'Hi,
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning again. This is Jonathan Small, host and producer of All About You. All About You is one of two different programs that I have the pleasure of hosting and producing live every single week at AccessTV.org studio. All About You is a show that's designed to give you, the viewers, the chance to hear and learn about the particular guest's life story. And this morning on All About You, we have a very instrumental guest who was a key member of one of the first NFL dynasties back in the 70s, the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's also had a tremendous life story of overcoming adversity, serving in the Vietnam War era as well. And it's our pleasure for the AccessTV.org network to have this morning a four-time Super Bowl champion member of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Vietnam veteran, author, no other than Rocky Bleier. Good morning, Rocky. How are you doing?
I'm just fine, Jonathan. Thank you for having me on your show. And it's a pleasure being with you.
Okay, it's our pleasure, Rocky. Rocky, I believe you were born and raised in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Correct. I was born and raised in Appleton, Wisconsin. My folks owned a neighborhood bar. We grew up above the bar, and so it was a great experience. It was a block from downtown, a block from the grade school, and so. And the neighborhood surrounded us with the guys I played with as we were growing up, and so that was the beginning background, and then as we continued to go on, we on to high school, and it was a brand new high school, and so we had much success because it drew a lot of great local athletes to that school at that time, and through that period of our high school, we never lost a football game, and so it was really exciting to grow up during that period of time.
Rocky, did you play the running back position when you were playing in high school?
Yes, I did. I played that and defensive back on the defense, as everybody played both ways most of the time. And so we had a great coach by the name of Torchy Clark, and he both was the basketball coach and the football coach. And as I said, we'd never lost a football game. We only lost 5 basketball games during that period of time. So it was a monumental mark for those of us who had played and gave us opportunities to continue our education. And because of that success, I had a chance to go to the University of Notre Dame.
Now, what was it like when you went to the University of Notre Dame, one of the most prestigious college football programs in football?
Well, the interesting thing about that at that moment in time was that if you just reflect back, Notre Dame had great football in the 50s. In the early part of the 60s, and then it kind of tapered down. Now, we weren't necessarily big Notre Dame fans, and so it wasn't necessarily on my radar, although we had a patron that would stop into my father's bar who happened to be a Notre Dame grad, and he said, "I can get you an interview at Notre Dame, and I think you should go and take it." and he, and he also gave me another great piece of advice. He said, "Listen, you're going to get a lot of scholarship offers to go to different universities, and every time you go and visit one, they're going to roll out the red carpet and show you a good time. So by the time you go to 4, 5, 6 different colleges, how do you make your decision?" He said, my suggestion is choose 3 schools that you would like to graduate from. Not necessarily play football, because anything can happen. You can have injuries and not continue to play, but you'll always have an education. And I thought that made great sense. And so I went to 3 schools: University of Wisconsin, because it was my home state; Notre Dame, obviously, as I had made mention, and then I went out to Boston College because there was another friend that stopped at my father's bar that was from Boston College. He said, "I'd get you an interview out there." And so then I did what every good Catholic boy was taught to do, and that was to go to church, pray for guidance and direction. And then, like every good Catholic boy, I did what my mother wanted me to do. And that was to go to Notre Dame. No,
Right.
but that was part of the background. So I went to the University of Notre Dame, and we had a brand new coach. Ara Parsegian had just come in as a head coach, and his story and his history, as you look back on it, changed that whole program. And because of the kids that he had recruited and built a team on, and because of his leadership ability and his coaching ability, as I had made mention, we win the national championship my junior year, and I become captain of the team my senior year. So my whole experience at Notre Dame, much like in high school, was the people I played with, the level of quality of players that allowed us to to be able to win. And because of that, you're a part of it. You get recognized for your contribution, and then I get drafted to the NFL by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Now, when you find yourself being drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, this was in 1968, so this was before the Steelers really started to become a dominating NFL team. What was your take on, I know you're probably excited, most likely, to be drafted, but did you really want to play for the Pittsburgh Steelers at that time in 1968?
I was just happy. I think, at that moment in time, I was just happy to be drafted, into the NFL. And now, much as the success I just talked about in high school and in college, I was not the Steelers' first choice.
Mm-hmm.
I did not make their top 10 list.
Mm-hmm.
I was the 417th person picked in the draft that year. I was a 16th round draft choice. But as I tell people, hey, there were 17 rounds. At least I was not the last guy picked.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came to Pittsburgh, and people said, well, how did you make the team at that time? And my response was, do you remember who played for the Steelers in the 60s? That's how come I made the team, because nobody remembers who played for him during that period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a chance to play 10 of 14 games, and this was 1968. So let's put things in perspective. 1968 was also the height of the war in Vietnam. We had more personnel over in Vietnam at that period of time than anything else. So everybody was eligible for the draft, and they didn't really care where you came from or what had taken place. So I had 4 years of going to school, and so now I was eligible for the draft. And I can remember I got my my 1A classification. I was in Steelers training camp, and they said, don't worry, we'll take care of this for you. We'll get you in the reserve of the National Guard, I'm assuming. But like everything else, things fall through the crack, and maybe it was meant to be. And it was towards the end of the season, I get a letter in the mail delivered to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I went to open it up, and it said, greetings, we'd like to inform you that you've been inducted into the armed services of your country. It was my draft notification, being inducted, to report the next morning at 8 a.m. to the AV station, and my world was kind of just turned upside down. It was postmarked a week later, and all of a sudden I found my way onto going to boom the next morning, basic training. Made some calls, to have my parents come and pick up my car, is some of my clothes. I packed a suitcase and off I went to join the Army.
Well, Rocky, now you only played the first season for the Pittsburgh Steelers, so you really didn't establish yourself too long, obviously, after only playing one season, and then you find yourself being drafted to the Vietnam War. How was the mental transition now to find yourself going from the NFL football to the Vietnam War at that particular time in your life? You're a very young man. I mean, was you scared? Was you nervous? Was you interested? I mean, what was your whole mental makeup of now making a transitions from the NFL to the Vietnam War?
I think, Jonathan, I think really and as I look back on it now, and maybe the process in which it had gone through that I just explained, that it happened so fast that I didn't have a time to think about it. All I could do is react to the news. So I got my draft notification. Oh, my goodness gracious. And so got my stuff together in a small period of time, and then all of a sudden, bam, I was shipped off to basic training. Now, and I put this in perspective, is the fact is that, okay, fine. So I'm in somewhat better condition maybe than most guys who had been drafted at the time, only because of playing, that first 10 games in the NFL. So going into training camp wasn't any different than going to training camp, I should say. Going to basic training wasn't any different than going to training camp. You had coaches yell at you. There was a certain expectation. Now you get sergeants that are yelling at you. There's physicals that you have to go through, and so to some degree it happened so quickly. I didn't have to worry about it. I just was reacting to the situation, and it got me through basic training and advanced infantry training. And then all of a sudden, boom, you get orders, and you're going to Vietnam with thousands of other young soldiers during that period of time.
But see, I think the difference is, Rocky, unlike Muhammad Ali, I guess he decided not to go into the Vietnam War, you were kind of interested, even though you said you really didn't have enough time to really, wonder about exactly what you needed to do. You never had any doubts. I mean, you mentioned something earlier during the segment, because I think even when they had the movie portraying your life, I think, well, you have to kind of refresh me again. Did you try to find a way to avoid not going to the draft at one point?
That's right. I think that all of a sudden so the Vietnam War was in the front of every young person that was eligible for the draft, whether you were in high school, whether you're in college, what was taking place, and so, and it was not necessarily, something that it wasn't a popular war, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, fine. Now you have some choices, what are your choices? Well, you can leave the country. If you may remember back then, some people were doing that. You could join the reserve or the National Guard. That didn't work out for me at that moment in time. You could enlist, but that was a 4-year commitment. Being drafted at that time was only 2 years. I mean, I did have things to do. I wanted to come back and play football. And so, all of a sudden it was like, then it was like, okay, fine. You go, okay. In the long run, how do you think of it? How do you view yourself? You wanted to live up to your responsibility, and that was part of that responsibility. What would I tell my kids if they were said, "Hey, Dad, what did you do during the war?" And so there was a certain self pressure to go, okay, fine. This is the path that is laid before me, and so I will have to follow it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Rocky, during the time when you were in Vietnam, and then this, I guess, grenade goes off. Well, first you get shot, I believe, and then you get hit by a grenade.
Right.
What was the experience like? I mean, could you kind of lead us up into that point when you finding yourself fighting in Vietnam and then you finding yourself being shot? What was that experience like for people out there to listen and
So anyway, so we're up in I Corps. Vietnam was break up into I 2, 3, and 4 Corps. We're up in I Corps, south of just north of DMC or south of the DMC, in an area called Hep Duck. Now there was a movement that was taking place, unbeknownst to me. I'm only a private. I don't know all these things that are going on. You just do what you're told to do and where you're supposed to go. And there's a movement later on, as I find out, from the Marines up north that are pressing down on the Vietnamese army, and we were to be a retaining force underneath them as they were coming down this way. And so this is in August of '69, and we were out on patrol, so we knew their enemy activity was out there, and I was about fourth, fifth in line. I was a grenadier carrying the M79 grenade launcher, and the word was keep 5 yards distance between one another, keep your eyes and ears open, and the enemy's around. And when all of a sudden I heard our point man holler, "Gook, gook," and shots broke the stillness. And they started to run, and he started to chasing, pulling everybody out in the middle of that rice paddy, when all of a sudden a machine gun started to level the area, and bodies were diving left and right, and I dove into a rice paddy to the left of me. 4 guys were pinned down. I saw the machine gun. My responsibility was get some firepower onto that position. I rolled over my side, breached my grenade, when all of a sudden I felt a thud in my left leg, and it burned and bled, and I was hit for the first time that day. Discharged my round, got enough fire protection on that position where the 4 guys were pinned down. Crawled out of there. Medic came over, he wrapped my leg at that time, and ultimately we crawled back to our commanding officer, set up another defensive position. The Vietnamese army probed and came closer, and got close enough when all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, I saw a grenade come flying through the air, and it hit my commanding officer right in the middle of the back, and it bounced off and rolled between my feet, and before I could jump out of the way, it blew up through my right foot, knee, and thigh. And again, we were in another firefight until the sister platoon fought its way down and dragged us out of there. So those were the injuries that I received that day, and got to an aid station, got to Da Nang, where we got patched up, and then I flew to Tokyo, where I spent 3 weeks in the hospital before I came back to the States, where I then spent 9 months in the hospital, went through 3 more operations. And so that was the injuries I sustained, and ultimately the time I put in.
So, Rocky, those injuries that you had, that had allowed you to exit from the Vietnam War? Because you said you spent about 9 months in the hospital.
Well, yes. So I came back. So I came back, and so I was like an outpatient. So I've had several operations, and they couldn't send me back to duty as of yet. Because of that. And so you'd have an operation, and it'd take 4 or 5 weeks before it would heal, and then I had another one that took some time, and so all of a sudden you get caught into that kind of and I had I worked for the military at the time, and we had a job, and we like an outpatient job, and so we did that stuff, and so then, fortunately, unbeknownst to me, when '69 they were starting to withdraw people from Vietnam, and so they were kind of turning down, and so by 1970 they were. If you were on combat active duty, they were releasing you with a 5 month early out, and so that got me out of the military in just about May of maybe 70, and and then I went from there, and and I had been working out. I've been working out as best I possibly could during that period of time. Was back trying to run. My injuries were healing, and I was back in the gym working out. And so I went back to training camp in 1970.
Now, Rocky, the movie that was portrayed of your life story, it was showing throughout the movie what you was experiencing, trying to get yourself back in shape. And it even showed some of the disagreements that the Pittsburgh Steelers had with having you playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then it was even showing some sad moments that I think they were showing you. I guess the offense and the defense during practice, they go up against each other. And you took a hit. You was trying to run. Now, I don't know how accurate a biographical film could be towards a person's life, but it was another sad moment when they showed you running. And I don't know if the guy who was portraying Mean Joe Green or not, I think it was Bubba Paris. Not Bubba Paris. He's an actor, but he's a former football player. And I remember him picking you up, and it's like he didn't really want to even throw you down. He kind of like he felt sorry for you. So I'm saying all that to say, Rocky, was the picture that was portrayed of your life story kind of accurate towards what you was really experiencing when you was trying to get back towards playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yeah. So a movie's a movie, and they take some license within it. But the feeling, so they came back, and or they invited me to come back in 1970, and as I said, I went through training camp, and it took its toll. I mean, it just 2 days and running all the time, and as much as I had rehabbed and maybe got myself somewhat back into shape, it wasn't that kind of a shape, for 2 a day practices and so on. And eventually, I'd I'd have trouble. I'd limp a little bit during practice and so on, but they kept me through that whole period of practice and training camp. And so then as cuts came and people were released and so on, and now I don't know the effect of or what other players thought about at the time, because we're all trying to make the team, or what other running backs, and whether they're just hanging on to me or whatever it was. And so it came down to the last cut, and Chuck Noll cut me and released me, and he said, "Go home, get yourself healthy, do what's necessary, and we'll invite you back next year to be able to make the team." Then I got a call a day later from Dan Rooney, Art Rooney's son, who was then general manager of the team, and he said, "I'm sorry I wasn't there to be able to talk to Chuck." He said, "I think that we're going to put you on injured reserve. We want our doctors to take a look at you. Maybe there's something they can do to help you." And so they bought me a year. And the reason, from Dan's choice was that, hey, listen, here was a young man that served his country. I think he should, have all the opportunities that he can possibly get, and we'll provide that for him. That's the kind of family that they were. So they bought me that year, and I had another operation, and it was a healing process again, and so on. And you got to come back, and I came back the following year. And I came back the following year, and I made the taxi squad, or the developmental squad as they're called today. Mm-hmm. So they bought me 2 years to heal, 2 years to get stronger, 2 years to get in shape, and you have to do something with that period of time. And so I come back a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. In 1972, 72, I was the leading ground gainer during the exhibition season. Mm. Thank you very much. Good enough to make the team, never carried the football during that period of time. Played special teams, but hey, that's better than the year before. I came back again and in 1973, a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. Actually, I was quite a bit bigger. I weighed 218 pounds. I bench pressed 460 pounds. I squatted over 650 pounds, and I really had worked on my body to be able to get back in shape. Leading ground gainer, once again, during the exhibition season. Got to carry the ball once during that season.
Right.
Better than the year before. And then I thought, and I have to tell you this in all honesty, because then I thought, well, to come back the following year, I was going to make the team, I was going to have to fight with every free agent, draft choice, and rookie once again to be able to do that. And I didn't think it was fair. Not that life's fair. I thought, well, hey, maybe my life's going in another direction. Okay, I mean, I did come back. I did make the team. I got a chance to play, maybe not to the level I thought, but hey, that wasn't part of the deal. And so after the 73 season, I left the Steelers to find my life's work. And actually, I was living in Chicago, working for an insurance agency, when I got a call from a teammate of mine, Andy Russell, who's no longer with us, and it was a good friend. He was captain of the team, he played linebacker for us. And I think this is important because the fact that sometimes we all have a period in which we question what we're going to do and why. And so he's coming into Chicago. He was coming into Chicago. He said, let's get together. And I declined because I wasn't going back and play. He pushed. I declined some more, and he pushed some more. And then he asked me the question, why? And the only thing that I could spit out at that time was that I quit. I'm not coming back. And he said, well, you can't quit. He said, if you quit, what you've already done is you've already made a decision for that coaching staff. He said, do you like them well enough to make decisions for them? He said, no, your responsibility, if this is what you want to do, is you come back and you make them make a decision. You back them in the corner. You give them every reason to either keep you or release you, but you don't cut yourself. I mean, the reality of this game is that we're all expendable. The reality of this game is we all can be cut at any time, but if this is what you want to do, then you don't cut yourself. And maybe it was just the arm twisting I needed from, well, maybe an older brother I didn't have. And I went back, and everything that I had received did take place. And I'd fight with every free agent, draft choice, and rookie once again to be able to make the team. Leading ground gainer during the exhibition season. Now, I tell you that only because of the fact that the reason I was a leading ground gainer during the exhibition season wasn't because of the fact I was bigger, better, faster than all the other running backs. No, it was the simple fact that I played more than anybody else during that period of time. I carried the ball more than anybody else during that period of time. Given those two simple statistics, I better be the leading ground gainer because all they were providing for me was what? An opportunity. And they had to keep me. And as I tell people, I was the fifth running back out of four at the beginning of season, back playing special teams once again.
Now, Rocky, this 74 team, because it sounds like to me, you said you took off 1973 and then you would come back, I guess, the following season. That would lead it in. That to me, that sounds like that's leading into 1974. And it looks like, for what people indicate, that was one of the best draft classes in Pittsburgh Steelers history. I think Len Swan was drafted that year, John Starworth. There were some other players too. You would know them. You just let me know who the other
Jack
great.
Lambert, Mike Webster, Jack Lambert, Stallworth, Donnie Shell, all those guys, those names, they're all in the Hall of Fame.
Right. And then a couple years later, the Pittsburgh Steelers would win their first Super Bowl. And I guess that same year, 74, yes. Right? 74
season.
Okay. So what was that whole experience like now to be part of a Super Bowl when we're giving you the title for Super Bowl champion member of the Pittsburgh Steelers? So what was that camaraderie like when the whole team was coming together during that year?
That was, we would just take it back a little bit. So Chuck Noll comes in 69, and he goes 1-13. And so we get a little bit better. in 70 and then 71 and 72 was the first time in the history of the franchise that we win the division. And we got to the playoffs, and we ultimately we lost in the playoffs, but it was the first time that we had won, and so all of a sudden you could see that team building, and it boiled down to one play that boils down to playing the Oakland Raiders. It was with Franco Harris, immaculate reception, 1972. He goes and scores within the last 28 seconds, and all of a sudden, boom, things changed. And there was kind of a belief system, and now people became very excited about the team. And then 73, now 74, we were winning, now 74 comes. Okay, so I brought you up to 1974, so I make the team in 1974. As I said, I was the fifth out of four running backs. But in the first game, Franco Harris gets hurt, and the backup becomes the starter, and I become the backup to the backup. Wow, I had never been there before. So with renewed vigor, that first game, second game, third game, fourth game, the backup, Frenchie Fuqua, gets hurt, and I'm inserted in the game at fullback, along with my running mate, a guy by the name of Preston Pearson. And so we get to start that game, and right before the half, Preston breaks one 43 yards, scores, gives us a lead. We go on at halftime. Who's going to start the second half? Maybe those guys that got you the lead in the first half, and we get to start the second half, and we win that game. Following week, everybody's still banged up, so Preston and I get to start, and as a team, we win that game. The week thereafter, it's a Monday night game, an extra day of healing. Franco now gets healthy. Dang it. But that's okay. At least we got a chance to play, prove what we could do. And we had a pregame meal right before that game, and breakout groups, all the running backs get together, and backfield coach said, okay, fine. He said, Franco, you and Rock will start tonight. Momentarily, I was quite confused. I didn't know how we both could play the same position at the same time. When it dawned on me I was going to play the fullback position, I was going to play the other running back position. Nobody told me that. I wish they would have. I'd been better prepared going to that game. But we get to start the game, and we win that game. And we get to start the following week, and we win that game. We start the remaining part of the season, and we win the division, and we get into the playoffs. And we win the playoffs, and we go to the Super Bowl for the first time, and we win the Super Bowl. Now, the reason I got a chance to play wasn't because I was bigger, better, faster, as I'd made mention before. But Chuck Noll had come up to our backfield coach and said, you have a weakness in your backfield. Who is your best blocker? He said, Bleier. He said, then start him. One talent. And so it was because of that I got a chance to play, and we went on to play for the remaining part of the next 6 years, and won 3 more Super Bowls. And in 1976, as we mentioned before, Franco and I became the second set of running backs in the history of the NFL, each to gain 1,000 yards rushing. And then after 12 years, I retired. And that's kind of my story, being in the right place, right time, with a group of all pro players, and then ultimately all Hall of Famers that set the tone for the success.
Now, Rocky, you never had a problem letting the other players get the spotlight. I mean, people think of the Pittsburgh, and obviously you're a very good football player, but when people think of the Pittsburgh Steelers, they think of Terry Bradshaw, they think of Franco Harris, Mel Blount, Jack Lambert, Donnie Shell. But Rocky Bleier, they think about you, but they don't see you probably the way they see the other players. Was there ever any egoism in you or other players that some of these players are really getting all of the attention and maybe we're just on the team? Or how did the whole chemistry makeup come together?
I thought the chemistry or the makeup, of the character of people. I never felt anybody complaining about not playing or not getting enough attention, or it wasn't about them. So I really felt a team. It was a team group helping one another. in practice as well as on the field, and being supportive. I've always thought that was in direct relationship to Chuck Noll and how he, as a head coach, pulled the guys together. Chuck was a very kind of quiet guy. He wasn't a rah-rah coach. He wasn't one of those guys that would pat you on the back, but you knew that he had an interest in you. He knew that when he thanked you, it was like, yes, you did a great job. And so that was, he'd never embarrass you in front of the other players. He'd never yell or scream at you. If he had something to talk to you about, it would be one-on-one, alone, and just the two of you. And so I think that helped set the tone of that team and the players that we had and how important it is. And also in that was the leadership of players, people that reach their potential. Andy Russell was our captain in early part of those first two Super Bowls. He had been, and so he kind of set a tone in the leadership. Jack Lambert, when he came in '74, and then established a leadership role, and not afraid to tell his teammates what they were doing wrong, and sometimes you need that within players, and so there was a great respect for the talent. There was a great respect for everybody else trying to make the team. And like all teams, you could get on you would get on other people's backs if they weren't living up to what their potential was and so you can only do that if you got some cohesiveness on that team, and you got really a belief with one another on that team, and you're not afraid to tell somebody, hey, you're not playing as well as you should be playing, and so on, and that becomes very important as well within the development of a team.
So since you retired in 1980, did your life, how did you make the transition at that particular stage of your life and career towards the next phase? Did you get into any other forms of the NFL as a coaching, as a commentator, or did you decide to get totally away from the NFL at that time?
Well, there was a couple things, and I was... when I had announced my retirement, or that I was going to retire, that this was going to be my last season, the local NBC television station here in Pittsburgh ultimately offered me a job to be a broadcaster. And now, I had not gone to school for being a broadcaster or any of that, but I thought it was a wonderful opportunity to be in front of the public again. We all have egos, and let's be honest with that. And so part of it is like, okay, my little ego said, hey, now here's an opportunity to do something. And it was a job that I had to learn. And so I did the news. I did the preseason games for the local NBC station as we covered the Steelers as a color commentator, and then I did the local news at 6 and 11, and so that was a new experience, and so it was fun, and it forced me to learn something about the television program. So that became, I was still attached, and with a new direction and a new learning process, and so that was kind of exciting for me, and then ultimately I did that for like 4 years. And in that transition as well, because of the success that we had, because of the story, I was asked to, give some speeches in high schools and some colleges and some teams around, and so that part of my experience started to develop, and so I had some of those that were going on and learning how to speak and how to make a presentation. doesn't come natural, and so you learn that. And so that's what I did for those 4 or 5 years in that transition. And then I went on to um, into the speaking and end of the business a little bit more, and then ultimately out of the blue, I got into the construction business, and so I now own and have a construction company here in Pittsburgh over the last 20 some years, and so that keeps me busy as well.
So although people may not see you in front of the camera like they see Terry Bradshaw, you still feel, and I just say Terry Bradshaw because he's on Fox 61 Sports or Fox
Right.
Sports. Obviously, people see him
Yeah.
on the NFL show every Sunday. You've been very content with your life at this particular stage as we're getting close to the end of the show. You have no regrets. I mean, you feel like you had a complete life post-secondary football, or is there anything else still missing and driving in you that you would like to achieve?
No, not all. Sometimes you think about it, and you go, okay, fine. You say, well, maybe when you should have gone into coaching. Well, I would have if that would have been, part of the drive. Obviously, it was not of an interest of me to do that, and so the the television end, that was a learning process, and I liked it. And it ultimately was like, oh, okay, fine. It gave me some experience, but that was not where my career was going to be. I knew my strengths and a lot of my weaknesses. And Terry's done a wonderful job, of being a color commentator, and his personality, and he's and he's had a great career, no matter where it may end up, if he may retire or not, but he had a great career, and because of that, and so he kept the Steelers and all of us in front of the television, watching Fox, and see if he made any mistakes so we can make fun of him. But anyway, that was not the case.
Let me ask you one last one tough, controversial questions. If you had to pick one of the players from that NFL Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty that would be the best player, or the player that you would want to play with, who would that player be and why?
Mark Lambert.
Jack Lambert? Okay.
Yes. So I've, so Jack, so, so, and the thing about, so Jack and I became roommates, and so we were roommates for about 6, 7 years. And so I got to know Jack. And the thing I liked about Jack was who Jack was. Jack was in front of you, up front, his feelings, about things. He never tried to hide it or anything. And he was a great internal leader to that team. And his perspective on things, and he didn't care, who you were. If you did wrong, he would let you know. If you weren't playing up to potential, he would let you know. And I think that becomes very important in any organization, and especially on a team, that you need some peer pressure given by some of the players to live up to your responsibility every now and then. And so that was Jack, and it was a lesson I learned well. And so I just, yeah, and he still is a great guy, friend.
Yeah, he might have been a little tougher than Mean Joe Green. Everybody think Mean Joe Green was the meanest player, but when Jack Lambert, I guess Cliff Harris patted the kicker when he missed the field goal attempt, and Jack Lambert slammed him to the ground. I guess he wasn't going to take anybody disrespecting any Pittsburgh Steelers player. So he was a real tough guy with that, I guess, snaggletooth teeth and
so
everything.
That was a prime
Yeah,
example.
Jack.
That was a prime example. No one else would have done it except for Jack.
Jack Lambert.
And so it was the right thing to do.
All right. Well, Rocky, it's been a pleasure having you as a guest this week on All About You Talk Show. Any last words you would like for people to know about yourself briefly before we end this show, or what you're planning to do or working on? Feel free to express yourself.
Okay, well, Jonathan, thank you very much for the opportunity to spend some time with you and to be on
Mm.
your show. So I think, the biggest thing is that whatever your future may be is really up to you and what you decide, what you want to be. And don't be afraid to experience some things that may not work. Because sometimes that gives you the education or the background to go someplace else. And so I've had a great career because of other people that allowed me to be a part of their organization and team. And because of it, you share that experience and success. And so that's what happened by playing with the Steelers. And I was so fortunate to be a 16th round draft choice on a team that had never won anything in 40 years, and then to be able to be a part of the 70s.
All right, Jack, those are going to have to be your last words. It was a great honor to have you as a guest this morning on the All About You talk show, and keep up the good work with what you're doing.
Thanks, Jonathan, very much.
Okay, you're
Appreciate it.
welcome. Okay. All right, this is Jonathan Small. I had just enjoyed hosting this edition of the All About You talk show with a very great former NFL player of the Pittsburgh Steelers, former Vietnam veteran, author, and he seems to be a real down to earth. I'm talking about Rocky Bleier. Seems to be a real down to earth, humble person, and it was a real honor, as I mentioned, and a pleasure interviewing Rocky Bleier this morning on the All About You talk show. Currently working on a show for next week. And until I see you again, for viewers out there, have a very blessed day and keep the faith. Thank you.